Our first modus tollens then becomes, if the subject believes that a deity exists, the subject does not believe that no deity exists. The subject believes that a deity exists, therefore the subject does not believe that no deity exists. The first modus ponens becomes, if the subject does not believe that at least one deity exists, the subject believes that no deity exists. The subject does not believe at least one deity exists, therefore the subject believes that no deity exists. These two arguments are logically valid, though as noted before, the conclusion is contingent upon the truth of the premises, and the first premise specifically is an unsubstantiated assertion for which I would incur a burden of proof were I to make that assertion. However, while I do believe this to be the case, I do think it is more likely than not. I do not assert to know this. In fact, as far as I can tell, it is not possible to know this. Now let us consider the second pair of syllogisms. The first, the variant of modus tollens, becomes, if the subject believes that a deity exists, this does not imply that the subject does not believe that no deity exists. The subject believes that a deity exists, however, this does not necessarily mean that the subject does not believe that no deity exists. And the second, the variation on modus ponens, becomes, if the subject does not believe that at least one deity exists, this does not imply that the subject believes that no deity exists. The subject does not believe that at least one deity exists. However, this does not necessarily mean that the subject believes that no deity exists. Now we arrive at the crux of the whole endeavor. The standard line used by atheists is indeed, just because I don't believe that a God does exist does not mean that I believe that no God exists. That is the first premise of the final syllogism. It's simply stated slightly differently. Recall that premises, as arguments, are assertions. Thus, when atheists insist that they have no burden of proof because they make no claims, this is intellectually dishonest. This is the fundamental claim of atheism based on its definition as non-belief as opposed to belief to the contrary. Recall, too, that assertions invoke a burden of proof on the claimant. Finally, understand that this assertion